Hello everyone and welcome back to Lady Disdain Reads. It's been another couple of weeks. I'm still pretty new with the move, so this is my bookshelf at the moment. Not as pretty as the one I had before, but it will do for now. Now, a few weeks ago I posted a video on Nicholas Boyle's interpretation of Mansfield Park, which I will link below so you can go and have a look at it. In this video I discuss how we should interpret Jane Austen as an Aristotelian rather than a Kantian thinker. If you're not sure who Kant or Aristotle are, then check out that video. I also tried to give a brief overview of who they are in the description of that video. And I argued in that video that although Nicholas Boyle makes many excellent points about the importance of words such as principle and duty in Mansfield Park, I think he discusses those words in a way that is a little bit too Kantian in its language, in the way in which it's described, and too little Aristotelian. On the other hand, the book I'm going to be discussing today, or rather a chapter from a book by Sarah Emsley called Jane Austen and the Philosophy of the Virtues, makes a case for Jane Austen as much more of an Aristotelian than a Kantian thinker. So I'm going to find myself agreeing with her a lot today. Now, I'm still working through Emsley's book. I haven't quite finished it yet, and hopefully the next video that will come out will be an overview, a comprehensive review of her discussion of Jane Austen. But for today, I have carefully read the video that, the essay that she wrote on Mansfield Park within her book, and that's what I'm going to be using today to discuss Mansfield Park as a novel. One of the claims that she makes, and that I'm going to be backing up because I agree with her, is that Mansfield Park is far from being the least interesting or entertaining of Jane Austen's novels. Fanny Price, its heroine, is also far from being the most passive and uninteresting heroine. And hopefully Emsley and I can tell you why today in this video. So first of all, let's introduce a couple of quotations from Alistair MacIntyre, in which he differentiates how Aristotle and Kant thought about virtue. Again, watch my Ethics and Jane Austen video, the first one I ever filmed, for more information on Alistair MacIntyre and Jane Austen. So MacIntyre argues this: virtues are dispositions, not only to act in particular ways, but also to feel in particular ways. To act virtuously is not, as Kant was later to think, to act against inclination. It is to act from inclination, formed by the cultivation of the virtues. Therefore, moral education is an education, a sentimental education, or in French, an éducation sentimentale. So, for MacIntyre, being virtuous is not simply about obeying your duty because it is your duty. True virtues lies in aligning one's emotions with one's duty. So acting, as he would put it, from inclination that has been formed by learning about one's duty and by trying to align one's emotions with one's duty. And that's the only way for MacIntyre that you can assure the flourishing of a human being. He also rather feistly concludes this. That's MacIntyre again. For Kant, one can be both good and stupid, but for Aristotle, stupidity precludes a certain kind of goodness. Again, one must understand and train one's feelings to be in accord, or in accordance rather, with what is virtuous. So, how does this apply to Mansfield Park, and how does it compare to what Sarah Emsley herself argues? First of all, Emsley helpfully points out that Fanny Price is not the passive or docile heroine that many take her to be. She suggests that Fanny only submits to other people's commands when she feels that their requests do not go against what she considers to be moral. She feels a sense of duty towards her relatives who have taken her in, but she does not follow that sense of duty blindly. In this sense, she is not a static character for Emsley, because she spends an awful lot of her time busily engaged in contemplation of what is right. Her mind is brimming and bubbling with thoughts, and she is not solipsistic, as every decision that she makes takes into consideration both her community's wishes for her, so in that case her family, the people around her, and her own wishes for herself. Most of her mental activity is in fact directed at reconciling that tension between individual wishes and her community's wishes. For instance, she is not so self-righteous as to never doubt that she is wrong in refusing to take part in the play put on by the Crawfords and the Bertrams. As Emsley herself points out, the narrator tells us that Fanny had begun to feel undecided as to what she ought to do, and as she walked round the room, her thoughts increased, and her doubts increased. Was she right in refusing what was so warmly asked and so strongly wished for? Her principles, then, are firm, but they are not inflexible or blindly firm. They guide her, but she carefully considers every single situation before deliberating. Emsley also shows Fanny to be an active and determined character in her decision to reject Henry Crawford, which she agrees with MacIntyre to be the central act of courage in the novel. This again shows Fanny to be concerned with the kind of happiness and sentimental education that MacIntyre says is characteristic of Aristotle. She doesn't follow her duty because she thinks it's merely her duty, but because she's actually trained her feelings to be in accordance with that sense of duty. Although there is much more that is interesting about what Emsley argues, and I hope to be able to talk more about it in the future, the other thing I really want to focus on today is Emsley's discussion of Sir Thomas Bertram. Not only is Fanny a character who is seen as static, inflexible, uninteresting, Sir Thomas Bertram is also a character in the novel who is disliked by most readers and not paid attention to by the ones who don't particularly dislike him. And yet, Emsley has a convincing take on him as a character who is himself Aristotelian in his thinking. For example, he realizes his failings with his own daughters towards the end of the novel, to the point where he feared that principle, active principle, had been wanting, that they had never been properly taught to govern their inclinations and tempers, by that sense of duty which alone can suffice. As Emsley says, the meaning of principle and duty here are not as simply something to be inculcated into a person's mind and blindly obeyed. Rather, duty and principle have to become something that is felt and understood. They have to be put into practice. As Sir Thomas says of his daughters, they had been instructed theoretically in their religion, but never required to bring it into daily practice. Although Emsley never explicitly mentions Kant in this chapter, she does so in other chapters. In the following passage, I think she shows to us that Austen is not a Kantian when it comes to virtue, as she argues this: although it has been suggested that Mansfield Park is a novel of moral principles, those principles, while important, are shown to be subservient to the education of the disposition. That word, disposition, which is similar to inclination, the word that MacIntyre uses, very important. Again, Emsley uses Sir Thomas as an example of this, as Sir Thomas laments that he had meant his daughters to be good, but his cares had been directed to the understanding and manners, not the disposition. So, what is disposition? To me, disposition is the harmonious coexistence of one's understanding of what is good with one's emotional inclination to do what is good, at least in this context. And again, that's similar to what MacIntyre calls inclination to do what is good. So a character like Fanny Price is more likely to do what is good, not because she is more submissive to her duty, but because she has, over years of contemplation, trained herself to recognize what is moral, and to recognize that what is moral is also what is likely to make her happier in the Aristotelian sense of fulfilling one's purpose in life. On the other hand, the Bertram sisters, the the Crawfords, and even Edmund Bertram, in his infatuation with Miss Crawford, might know what is right, but they do not feel it to be right, because it isn't pleasant for themselves. Pleasure and rightness or morality are distinguished for all of those characters. And that's because, of course, pleasure is not the same as happiness. But for Fanny Price, morality and happiness are one and the same, because she has been able to merge them through training her emotions to be in accordance with her duty. And therefore, all of those characters that I was mentioning are much more easily led astray than Fanny Price herself. So, today was just supposed to be an overview of Sarah Emsley's thoughts on Mansfield Park. As you can see, I find most of her thoughts very compelling. I think there is more that can be said about this novel, but I think that's a good start for today. Next time, I will bring you a full review of her book. I've already read some of it, and I already have a lot that I like and some that I dislike about her claims. So look out for that. And also, in a couple of weeks' time, I will attempt to post a video on Emma. So I'm going through Jane Austen's novels chronologically. So have a look out for that video, and for a video on Sarah Emsley's book, Jane Austen and the Philosophy of the Virtues. And check out some of my other videos, and have a good day, and I will see you very soon. Bye!